I think the Colts had maybe the best draft in this draft class. Is that crazy to say? So the Colts did not get the most talent out of this draft class. That is undeniably true. But if we're talking per what you had, they didn't have a first round pick because, got to make sure you get Carson Wentz, right? So they had to give up a first round pick for him. So obviously that wasn't great. But okay, you can't go back in time and not trade for Carson Wentz. What you can do is do what you can to have the best draft possible. And they had a lot of guys that I really liked. And I think that this is probably at least what an average draft value should be, even though they had no first round pick. So let's talk about why I liked it so much. Starting off with 53, Alec Pierce is a wide receiver I am incredibly high on. There's times when he reminds me of like Cooper Kupp. This is a guy who can play. And he is someone who, listen, evaluating wide receivers is difficult. It just is. Production doesn't seem to matter too much, so you can't use that as a measuring tool. You basically just have to watch the tape and guess. And, teams don't do a great job of it because no one does a great job of it. It's hard to evaluate wide receivers. That being said, when I evaluated him, I really liked him. So whatever that's worth, basically my saying is don't let a day two go by where you don't draft at least one wide receiver or safety. They would end up getting a wide receiver and a safety with the top 100 picks. More on Nick Crossan later, but for Alec Pierce, like it. Jelani Woods was an interesting one for me. So there were tight ends I had ahead of him, but I get it. Seems like a good blocking tight end who could develop into a receiver as well. They do like, he could be a Jack Doyle type for them, perhaps. So that would be good if that can happen. So it's not my favorite pick or anything. You see on just so you understand what the thing is that you see next to me, that is obviously the players. You have where they were selected, and then obviously, and then next to them, it's going to be where they ranked on the consensus big board. So you see there, that feels like it's a bit of a reach, but it's not a massive one. And they then got kind of a bit of a steal with their next pick. This is interesting because Bernard Raimann is someone who was one of my guys, so to speak. He was 43rd on the consensus big board. I had him as like a mid first round talent. He falls all the way to 77. So I guess I do kind of get it. Bit of an older prospect. Maybe that had some concerns for sure. But I don't know. I just thought he was so good. And like he was a really good tackle. I think he has starting tackle upside. I'm shocked he fell to 77. I really am. I don't get it. Again, if you look at offensive line play, that is something you can use production to measure. Guys who produce in the college level tend to produce in the NFL level. He produced at the college level, so I think he'll produce at the NFL level. I see no reason why he won't. Just a bizarre fall for him, I think. Nick Cross at 96, another safety who, this is interesting. So Nick Cross ran a 4.3, but what's interesting is he ran it at 211 pounds. So he's a bigger safety. Like a lot of these guys who run 4.3, it's like, okay, you look at them and they're like 170 pounds. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. Of course you ran a 4.3. Like, you're a skinnier guy. You're going to be faster. You have less weight to carry. He's someone who's relatively big. He has good frame and he has that speed. So right away, you're like, okay, that's interesting. And he's only 20 years old on top of that. So he has room to grow. Now, here's the other thing. He did not have a great 2021. He did play well in 2020 and 2019. So because of that, that's where, again, things get fascinating for me and why I'm interested in taking him. He could be a sleeper, and you can get quality safeties in later rounds. That's why I always say, don't draft Kyle Hamilton. Forget about how you feel about the player, but you can just get someone like Nick Cross way later on who can still be effective. He was, I believe, 61st on Pro Football Focus's big board. He gets selected at 96 here. So that's a big fall there. He was 90th on the consensus big board, but I think just given the athleticism and given the fact that he has been good in previous years, he feels like he could be a steal. For their final three guys, first I almost said Alec Ogletree. Nope, that's a different player. Andrew Ogletree, who seems like he's kind of a very raw tight end, maybe a developmental prospect, which at 192 is not the worst thing in the world to draft. I don't really understand this one totally, but I'm sure that, I haven't spent a ton of time looking into it. So there might be some reasoning to draft him because, again, 366 on the big board, goes at 192. That feels like it's a bit of a reach, but if you're reaching at 192, fine, go ahead, reach, because whatever, get the players you like. Someone who I don't think is a reach is Curtis Brooks, who the consensus big board had at 277. But if I was, when preparing for this video, I was looking up some of his advanced statistics, seeing how they measure up, and they're actually pretty good. Like, they're not amazing. They're not going to like wow you and make you say, okay, this guy's going to be a stud or anything. But his pass rush grade, according to PFF, which is something that translates, it's very good. A pass rush win rate of 19.3. This was at Cincinnati. So it's not maybe the hardest difficulty, that you're going up against, but still, I mean, he had to play against some good competition along the way. So, had good games against like Indiana. So, that's something, right? So I think that he's a fascinating player. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be a star, but for 216, like, yeah, that's totally worth it. That's a fine value pick. Absolutely. Finally, at 239, do not know much about Rodney Thomas. He's one of the few players that I thought I've said in previous videos, there's only 2 players that were drafted that did not make the consensus rankings. I guess, but I said that more than twice now, so I guess I'm wrong about that. But Rodney Thomas, another guy who did not make the consensus rankings. That's why it says not applicable there. At 239, though, seems like he's just going to be a special teams guy, which is fine for that value. So, yeah, as a whole, I like this draft a lot. I think the top 4 are really what carry it for me. And also Curtis Brooks, I think, should have been drafted way before 216. Will he be a star? I don't know. Because, again, like, the run defense was not great with Brooks. Like, that's kind of the issue. But there's still plenty to get excited about with Curtis Brooks. A lot to get excited about with Alec Pierce and Bernard Raimann, especially, and even Nick Cross. I feel like they ended up, there's a real chance they could end up with like 4 starters in like a solid 3rd down edge rusher in Brooks. So if that happens, like, you've just nailed this draft. So again, that's best case scenario though. Who knows if it'll work out, but there was some good talent here. So for the value they had, they certainly had one of the best drafts. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.